Hello, welcome to my channel. So I had haircut very short. So anyway, today I'll be reading a cute Japanese folktale. The title is Yatsubakezuki in Japanese, and English title is The Shape-Shifting Food. So there are foxes in this story. They are so cute. And I drew another picture for the story. The fox has something magical. So let's get started. The Shape-Shifting Food. Part 1. The Fox in the Bamboo Grove. Long ago, in a quiet mountain village, there stood a small temple surrounded by tall cedar trees and gentle bamboo groves. The temple was old, but it was peaceful. Every morning, soft bells echoed through the valley. Birds sang from the branches. The wind whispered through the leaves. An elderly monk lived there alone. The villagers respected him. He was clever. He smiled often. But he also had one small weakness. He loved tricks. Whenever he heard an unusual story, he wanted to see it with his own eyes. Whenever he found something mysterious, he could never stop himself from becoming curious. One cool autumn morning, the monk finished sweeping the temple garden. Golden leaves covered the stone path. He looked up at the clear blue sky. "It is a beautiful day for a walk," he said quietly. He picked up his walking staff and slowly made his way toward the mountains. The forest was calm. Small streams flowed beside the narrow path. Dragonflies danced above the water. Every now and then, squirrels hurried across the branches overhead. The monk enjoyed listening to every sound. As he walked deeper into the forest, he suddenly heard something unusual. Someone was speaking. The voices were soft, very soft. The monk stopped walking. He looked around carefully. "I wonder who is here," he whispered. The voices came from behind a thick bamboo grove. Very quietly, he stepped closer. He gently moved aside a few bamboo leaves. Then his eyes became wide with surprise. In a small clearing stood a young fox. The fox was wearing a strange little hood. It looked old. It was covered with tiny embroidered patterns that shimmered whenever the sunlight touched them. The fox stood on two legs. It bowed its head. Then it spoke. "I will become a traveler." The fox pulled the food over its its head. A soft puff of white smoke surrounded it. For just a moment, the clearing disappeared behind the mist. When the smoke faded, the fox was gone. Standing there instead was a young traveler carrying a walking stick. The monk blinked several times. "My goodness," he whispered. The traveler smiled proudly. Then, with another puff of smoke, it became a fox again. The young fox nodded happily. "I almost did it perfectly," a deeper voice suddenly answered. "Not quite." The monk looked further into the clearing. An older fox stepped out from the shadows. Its fur had turned silver with age. Its eyes were calm and wise. The old fox carried another hood over one shoulder. "You forgot your tail for a moment," the old fox said. The younger fox looked embarrassed. "Oh, it is difficult. It takes patience," the old fox replied. "You must believe completely that you have become someone else." The younger fox nodded. "I understand." Again, the fox placed the hood upon its head. This time, it became an old woman, then a woodcutter, then a merchant. Each transformation became smoother than the last. The monk could hardly believe what he was seeing. "So the stories are true," he thought. "There really are magical foxes." For nearly an hour, the monk quietly watched. Several other foxes arrived one by one. Each wore a different magical hood. Each practiced changing into different people. One became a little girl. Another became a fisherman. Another became a wandering musician carrying a flute. Sometimes they made mistakes. A tail appeared. An ear remained free. Or their voices sounded like foxes instead of humans. Whenever that happened, the older fox gently corrected them. "No, again. Take your time. There is no need to hurry." The monk smiled. The little foxes looked almost like children learning their lessons. Finally, the old fox clapped its paws together. "Very good. You have all improved today." The young foxes waged their tails happily. The lesson was over. Some of them stretched. Others laughed together. One of the younger foxes removed its food and carefully placed it on a flat stone beside the clearing. I am thirsty, it said. I will drink from the stream. The others followed. Soon every fox disappeared among the trees. Only the magical food remained on the stone. The monk's heart began beating faster. He stared at it. So that is the source of their magic. He knew he should simply leave. He knew it was not his. But curiosity quietly whispered inside his heart. I only want to look at it. He slowly stepped into the clearing. The food looked ordinary at first. It was made of soft cloth. Yet tiny golden threads ran through the fabric. When he touched it, it felt strangely warm. Just then he heard footsteps. The young fox was returning. The monk quickly hid the food behind his back. The fox stopped walking. Oh, you startled me. The monk smiled kindly. Forgive me. I was simply passing through. The young fox relaxed. That is good. The monk looked at the fox thoughtfully. Then an idea appeared in his mind. It was not a very honest idea, but it seemed wonderfully clever. He folded the plain cotton towel that he had carried around his neck all morning. The towel was old. It was useful, but it had no magic at all. The monk smiled even more warmly. My young friend, he said. The fox tilted its head. Yes, the monk lowered his voice. There is no need to be nervous. The fox looked confused. What do you mean? The monk leaned closer. I know you are secret. The fox's eyes twitched. You do? Of course. The monk looked around carefully before whispering. I am one of your friends. The fox blinked. You are? Certainly. I simply choose the form of a human monk today. The fox gasped. I did not know foxes could become monks. The monk nodded proudly. Oh yes, I have traveled for many years. I have learned many secret tricks. The young fox's eyes sparkled with admiration. Really? Indeed. The monk gently unfolded his plain towel. This is my special food. The fox stared at it. It looks different. The monk smiled wisely. Only experienced foxes use this kind. It may look simple, but it allows much smoother transformations. The young fox looked amazed. I have never seen one before. That is because only master foxes receive them. The monk paused for a moment. Then he looked at the magical food lying on the stone. Your food is very nice, but perhaps we should exchange them. The young fox looked down at its own food, then back at the monk's towel. You would trade with me? Of course. You are running well. You deserve better magic. The young fox could hardly believe its luck. Thank you. Without hesitation, it picked up its magical food and handed it to the monk. The monk gave the fox the ordinary cotton towel. The fox bowed deeply. I will treasure it. So will I, the monk replied with a smile. Holding the magical food carefully in both hands, he slowly walked away from the clearing. Behind him, the young fox happily placed the towel upon its head. Nothing happened. It frowned, then tried again. Still nothing. Far away, the monk disappeared among the trees before the young fox realized something was terribly wrong. Part 2. The monk's mischievous tricks. The monk hurried back to his little temple. He looked over his shoulder many times as he walked. The forest was quiet. Only the wind followed him through the trees. When he finally reached the temple gate, he carefully closed it behind him. Then he entered his small room. The magical food rested in his hands. For a long moment, he simply looked at it. So, he whispered, "This is a famous shade-shifting food." The golden threads shimmered softly in the afternoon light. The cloth felt warm, almost as if it were alive. The monk remembered everything he had seen in the bamboo grove. The foxes only placed it on their heads. They believed in the form they wished to become. I wonder if it will work for a human. His heart beat faster. He gently placed the food upon his head. For a moment, nothing happened. The room remained perfectly still. The monk smiled awkwardly. Perhaps I imagined the whole thing. Then he closed his eyes. I want to become a young traveler. Warm air surrounded him. The room seemed to spin gently. A soft white mist filled the air. When the mist disappeared, he hurried towards the polished bronze mirror hanging on the wall. He gasped. The old monk was gone. Looking back at him was a handsome young traveler with bright eyes and smooth skin. His grey hair had become black. The wrinkles on his face had disappeared. Even his bent back had become straight. It worked. He laughed with delight. It really worked. He hurried outside. The temple cat was sleeping beside the stone steps. The cat slowly opened one eye. Instead of looking frightened, it simply yawned. The monk laughed. Even the cat cannot recognize me. He walked down the road toward the village. The first person he met was an old farmer carrying a basket of vegetables. The farmer politely bowed. "Good afternoon, traveler." "Good afternoon," the monk answered. The farmer walked away without even glancing back. The monk could hardly contain his excitement. "It is perfect. No one knows who I am." He returned to the temple before sunset. That evening, he could hardly sleep. His mind was full of ideas. "I wonder what else I can become." The next morning, after finishing his prayers, he carried the food into the forest once again. This time, he chose a quiet place where no one could see him. He placed the food upon his head. "I will become a brave samurai." Again the white mist appeared. When it faded, he stood wearing shining armor. A long sword rested at his side. His voice had become deep and strong. He admired himself happily. Magnificent. He walked toward the village road. Before long, several villagers appeared. They were carrying bundles of firewood. When they saw the armored samurai, they immediately stepped aside. They bowed deeply. Good day, honorable sir." The monk tried not to laugh. He nodded proudly. "Carry on." The villagers remained bowed until he had passed. As soon as they disappeared around the corner, the monk burst into laughter. "Oh, what fun this is!" The next day, they tried something even more exciting. He walked to the edge of the large field where several children were playing. Then he hid behind a group of trees. "I shall become a giant serpent." The food glowed softly. Moments later, a huge snake with shining scales slowly slithered from the bushes. The children looked up. Their eyes grew wide. "A snake! A giant snake!" They screamed and ran toward the village as fast as their little legs could carry them. The monk watched them disappear. Then he quietly returned to his human form. He chuckled all the way back to the temple. Oh dear, I should not laugh. But that was wonderfully amusing. Day after day, he invented new tricks. Each one became a little bolder than the last. One cloudy afternoon, he became a wandering mountain spirit. He covered himself in long white robes. His hair floated like silver mist. When two woodcutters passed beneath the old pine trees, he silently appeared behind them. The woodcutters slowly turned around. Their faces became pale. A ghost! They dropped their bundles of wood and ran away shouting. The monk laughed so hard that tears filled his eyes. Another morning, he became a huge black bear. He stood beside a mountain pass. When several merchants appeared carrying heavy packs, he slowly rose onto his back legs. The merchants froze. One man nearly fainted. Another dropped his hat. All of them fled without looking back. The monk quickly returned to his own form before anyone else arrived. I have never enjoyed myself so much, he said. Word soon spread throughout the village. Strange things were happening. Some people claimed they had seen ghosts. Others instead that giant snakes now lived in the forest. Several travelers swore they had met mysterious samurai who vanished into thin air. At the tea house, everyone talked about the strange events. I saw a terrible monster. No, it was a ghost. It must be a mountain spirit. I heard it was a giant bear. The monk quietly drank his tea in one corner. He listened carefully. Even story made him smile. No one suspected him. One evening, an elderly woman sighed. I have become afraid to walk through the forest. Another villager nodded. My children refuse to gather mushrooms now. The monk's smile faded for just a moment. He had never wanted to frighten people so deeply. Still, the magical food was simply too much fun. I will be more careful, he told himself. For just a little while. But curiosity has a way of growing. Soon, being a samurai was no longer exciting enough. Becoming a ghost no longer surprised anyone. The monk wanted something greater. Something that would make everyone talk for years. One sunny afternoon, he climbed a rocky hill overlooking the village. From there he could see the rice fields shining in the breeze. Farmers walked below. Children chased dragonflies. The whole village looked peaceful. The monk smiled. I know. This time I shall become the greatest creature anyone has ever seen. He placed the food upon his head. He imagined enormous claws, sharp teeth, a body taller than the tallest horse. The white mist surrounded him. When it disappeared, an enormous beast stood upon the hill. The roar echoed across the valley. The farmers looked up. Their tools fell from their hands. Women covered their mouths. Children began crying. People ran toward their homes. Doors slammed shut. Windows closed. The monk watched the confusion below. Instead of feeling satisfied, however, something strange happened. The enormous body felt heavy, very heavy. Walking became difficult. His great paws sank into the soft earth. This is much harder than I expected, he muttered. He tried to return to his normal appearance. But before he could remove the food, another sound echoed from deeper within the mountains. It was not an echo. It was another roar. This roar sounded real. The monk slowly turned his giant head towards the forest. Far away, something enormous moved between the trees. Branches snapped. Birds burst into the sky. The monk's smile disappeared. What is that? The creature answered with another thunderous roar. This time, it sounded much closer. The monk suddenly realized something terrifying. Whatever was approaching was not an illusion. It was alive. And it had noticed him. The monk swallowed nervously. Oh, I may have made a very serious mistake. Part 3. A lesson in pride. The monk stood frozen upon the rocky hill. The magical food still rested upon his head. He remained in the shape of a huge beast. Far below, the village had become completely quiet. Every door was closed. Not a single person remained outside. Only the wind moved through the fields. Then the sound came again. Roar. It echoed through the mountains. This time it was much closer. The monk slowly turned towards the forest. Tall trees swayed. Branches shook. Birds flew into the sky all at once. Something very large was moving between the trees. The monk swallowed. I only wanted to play a harmless trick. This is becoming far too serious. He quickly reached for the magical food. I should become myself again. But before he could remove remove it, a gigantic brown bear stepped out of the forest. It was enormous. Its shoulders were broad. Its fur shone like polished wood beneath the afternoon sun. Its eyes were sharp and watchful. The monk had frightened many villagers by pretending to be a monster. But this creature was no disguise. It was a real mountain bear. The bear stopped. It looked directly at the monk. For several long moments, neither of them moved. The forest became completely silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The monk forced a smile. Perhaps it will simply walk away. The bear sniffed the air. Then it stood on its hind legs. It let out another powerful roar. The sound shook the leaves above. The monk's heart nearly stopped. Oh dear, I do not think it wishes to make friends. The bear took one slow step forward, then another. The monk carefully stepped backward. So, you live here. I understand. I shall leave. The bear answered by walking faster. The monk turned and began running. Running as a giant beast was much more difficult than he had imagined. His enormous feet slipped on loose stones. His long tail tangled around bushes. His heavy body crashed through small trees instead of walking around them. Behind him came the sound of pounding footsteps. The bear was chasing him. Oh no, the monk cried. This was not part of my plan. He hurried down the hillside. Branches scratched his face. Leaves flew into the air. Small rabbits jumped out of his way. Birds scattered from the trees. The monk desperately searched for a safe place. There, a narrow path curved around a large rock. He rushed toward it, but his giant body was far too wide. He bumped into the stone with a loud thump. Ouch! The bear continued running. The monk scrambled to his feet and hurried away again. His breathing became heavy. This magical body is far too big. I cannot even run properly. The chase continued through the forest. At last, the monk reached a small river. Cool water sparkled beneath the sunlight. Without thinking, he splashed into it. The water reached only halfway up his giant legs. He looked behind him. The bear had stopped at the river bank. For a brief moment, the monk smiled with relief. Perhaps it dislikes water. Then the bear calmly stepped into the river. It crossed without any difficulty at all. The monk sighed. So much for that idea. He climbed out onto the opposite bank. His wet feet slipped across smooth stones. He stumbled forward. The magical food nearly fell from his head. He quickly grabbed it. Oh, that was close. If the food fell into the river, he did not know what might happen. He carefully adjusted it. The bear continued following him. It was not running wildly anymore. Instead, it walked with slow confidence, as if it knew the strange creature before it was frightened, as if it understood that something was not quite right. The monk noticed this too. Why is it looking at me like that? It almost seems as though it knows I am pretending. The bear sniffed the air once more. Then it tilted its head. Its dark eyes remained fixed upon the monk. The monk suddenly remembered something. The old fox had told the young foxes during their lesson, "You must believe completely. If your heart becomes uncertain, your disguise will become weak." The monk's confidence disappeared. "I am afraid. I truly am afraid." The giant claws on his hands began to shrink. His sharp teeth became smaller. The fur along his arms slowly faded. Oh no, not now. He tried to imagine himself as a great beast again, but fear filled his thoughts. The magic became weaker. The bear stepped closer. It gave one gentle push with its powerful paw. The monk tumbled backward into a pile of soft leaves. His food flew into the air. It landed beside a tree. The white mist immediately surrounded him. When it faded, the enormous monster was gone. The old monk lay on the ground wearing his simple grey robes. His hat had rolled into the bushes. His walking staff rested several feet away. The bear blinked. It stared at the old man in surprise. The monk slowly opened one eye. "Oh, so now you know." The bear sniffed him again. It gave a deep rumbling sound. The monk squeezed his eyes shut. "I suppose this is the end." Instead, the bear simply huffed. It looked almost disappointed, as though it had expected a worthy rival but had found only a frightened old monk. The great animal turned around. Without another glance, it slowly walked back into the forest. Within moments, it disappeared among the trees. The monk remained perfectly still. He listened carefully. The heavy footsteps gradually faded away. Only birdsong remained. After several minutes, he finally sat up. He let out a long breath. I had never been so frightened in all my life. He picked up the magical food. Its golden threads no longer seemed playful. Now they reminded him of his foolishness. I have used you badly. He brushed leaves from his robe. His knees trembled as he stood. Slowly he began walking back towards the temple. The evening sun painted the mountains with warm orange light. Everything looked peaceful once again. Yet inside his heart something had changed. He remembered the frightened children, the worried farmers, the old woman who had become afraid to enter the forest. Until now, he had laughed at every trick, but suddenly none of them seemed very funny. As he walked along the quiet path, he softly said to himself, I wish to make people laugh. Instead, I only frightened them. The food felt much heavier than before. When the temple finally appeared between the cedar trees, the monk looked at it for a long time. Then he whispered, It is time to decide what should become of this magical food. Part 4. The food returns to the forest. The monk walked slowly through the temple gate. The evening sun had almost disappeared behind the mountains. Long shadows stretched across the quiet garden. The old stone lanterns stood silently beneath the maple trees. Everything felt peaceful once again. The monk sat on the wooden porch. The magical food rested gently in his lap. For a long time, he simply looked at it. The golden threads still shimmered softly in the fading light. It truly is a wonderful treasure, he whispered. But it does not belong to me. He remembered the young fox, its bright eyes, its innocent smile. The fox had believed every word he had spoken. The monk lowered his head. I deceived a child. His heart became heavy. That night he slept very little. Whenever he closed his eyes, he saw frightened villagers running away. He heard children crying. He remembered the great bear standing quietly before him. The bear had been stronger than he was, yet it had shown mercy. The monk softly sighed. I have learned enough. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, he wrapped the magical food in a clean white cloth. He picked up his walking staff. Then he quietly left the temple. The mountain air was cool. Morning mist drifted between the cedar trees. Birds welcomed the new day with gentle songs. The monk followed the same forest path he had walked many days before. Soon he reached the bamboo grove. Everything looked exactly as he remembered. The tall bamboo swayed softly. A nearby stream sparkled beneath the morning light. He quietly waited beside the clearing. I did not take long. It did not take long. One by one, the foxes appeared. The young foxes gathered together. The old silver fox stood before them. Just as before, today's lesson began. The young foxes practiced becoming travelers, woodcutters, old women, merchants. Sometimes they forgot their tails. Sometimes their ears remained free. The old fox collected them patiently. There is no need to hurry. Believe in your heart. Take one careful breath. The monk stepped forward. Every fox immediately stopped. The young fox who had lost the magical food gasped, "It is him!" The other foxes quickly gathered around the old silver fox. Some looked frightened, others looked angry. The old fox calmly stepped forward. "So you have returned." The monk bowed deeply. "I have." Without saying another word, he carefully unwrapped the white cloth. Inside rested the shape-shifting food. The morning sunlight reflected from its golden threads. The young fox stared at it in amazement. "My food." The monk gently lifted it with both hands. "I have come to return what was never mine." The forest became very quiet. The old fox looked carefully into the monk's eyes. "You finally understand." "Yes," the monk answered softly. "I understand now. I allowed my curiosity to become greed. I believed cleverness was more important than honesty." He bowed once again. "I deeply regret what I have done." The young fox slowly walked forward. It accepted the food with both paws. Then it carefully placed it upon its own head. A moment later, white mist surrounded it. When the mist disappeared, a young traveler stood smiling. This time there was no tail, no free ears. The transformation was perfect. The other foxes clapped happily. The young fox laughed with relief. "It works again." The monk smiled warmly. "I am glad." The old silver fox nodded. "You cared for it well. But tell me, what did you learn from borrowing our treasure?" The monk thought quietly before answering. "Magic cannot make someone wise. It only reveals what is already inside the person's heart." The old fox smiled. "A good answer." The monk continued. "I used your gift to frighten innocent people. I thought everyone would laugh, but instead they became afraid. The fault was not the food. The fault was mine." The old fox slowly closed its eyes. The greatest magic has never been transformation. The monk listened carefully. It is knowing when not to use power. Then the monk bowed once more. "I shall remember those words for the rest of my life." The old fox smiled gently. I believe you will. The younger foxes relaxed. Their frightened faces slowly became cheerful again. One curious little fox stepped forward. Master Monk, yes? Were you really able to become a giant monster? The monk laughed softly. I was. Were you frightened? The monk smiled. More frightened than I have ever been. The little fox giggled. What happened? The monk rubbed the back of his neck. A very large bear reminded me that pretending to be brave is not the same as truly being brave. The young foxes laughed together. Even the old silver fox smiled. The laughter was warm, gentle, kind, very different from the laughter the monk had enjoyed before. This laughter hurt no one. After a while, the old fox looked toward the forest. The morning lesson is not yet finished. The young foxes quickly gathered together again. Before returning to his place, the young fox looked back at the monk. I forgive you. The monk felt his eyes grow warm. Thank you. The young fox smiled brightly, and next time, the monk tilted his head. If you wish to watch us practice, you only need to ask. The monk laughed. I shall certainly do that. The old silver fox nodded in agreement. An honest guest is always welcome. The monk bowed one final time. Thank you. He quietly turned and began walking back towards the temple. As he disappeared between the tall bamboo, he heard cheerful voices behind him. The young foxes had already begun practicing once more. One became a fisherman, another became an old woman, a third became a cheerful merchant carrying a basket. The old fox patiently corrected each mistake. Just as before, the monk smiled. This time, he did not hide behind the bamboo. He simply continued walking. The forest seemed brighter than ever. The wind carried the sweet scent of pine and fresh earth. Small birds sang high above the trees. The stream flowed gently beside the path. Everything felt peaceful. When the monk returned to the temple, the villagers noticed something different. He smiled just as warmly as before, but he no longer played tricks on anyone. Instead, he greeted every traveler kindly. He helped children carry heavy baskets. He listened patiently whenever someone had a problem. The villagers often wondered why the old monk had become even gentler than before. Only the monk knew the answer. Sometimes, on quiet autumn mornings, he would walk near the bamboo grove. If he listened very carefully, he could hear soft laughter carried by the wind. Perhaps it was only the rustling leaves. Or perhaps young foxes were still practicing their magical lessons beneath the trees. The monk would smile. Then he would quietly bow towards the forest, not because of magic, but because he had learned that honesty, kindness, and humility are treasures far greater than any enchanted food. And from that day forward, the peaceful mountain village remained filled with gentle laughter, quiet wisdom, and the comforting songs of the forest. So the story is finished. So thank you for watching. Good night.